Well, now, everybody, I'm your host, Lambo Drew. You are now tuned into another edition of The Lever Show. Thank y'all for definitely tapping in another night. We have my homegirl, Tracy Taris, back in the building, so y'all want to make sure y'all do not miss this show tonight. Definitely tap in, man. Make sure everybody is definitely getting this link out, and people are out here, man. Definitely already comment. We're going to get to the comments right now. We're not going to waste any time because every time Tracy comes back to the show, she definitely gives some wonderful sound advice. Shout out to my guy, Kennard Haney. I see you in the building. Welcome back, Miss Tracy. Let's go. You know what time it is, man. Thank you, Kennard. Do what you do, Lambo. We definitely going to do what we do, man, out here on this end. Let's go and make this happen. Kennard Haney said, what's up, Leverage Show family? Thank you, Kennard, man. Shout out for all the love. Hello, Mrs. Johnson. Ken says, this is what I'm talking about. Hello with all the love, man. Definitely coming in from y'all. LA Law's in the building. Hello, everyone. I hope all is well. Good to see you, Kennard. Go ahead and show some love. You know what time it is. IC says, hello, Lambo family. Hey, brother Ken. Good to see you. You know what time it is. Loving to see my guy Issa's in the building. Issa says, man, Thursday blessings on this show. Yes, Thursday blessings on this show. Let's go get down with it with the get down. You know what time we're going to make it do. LA Law says, hi, IC. Good to see you. Definitely so good to see Issa in the building. Showing so much love, man, right here on this broadcast. Listen, without further ado, I'm bringing in my guests. Y'all know we coming in hot, man. We're definitely going to be mindful tonight of the time. So make sure y'all are locked, ready to load, and y'all are out here doing what y'all need to do to catch every last bit of this information. As we bring out my guest, Tracy Taris is in the building. Welcome back to the Lever Show, Miss Tracy.
Hi, Lambo. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for going on ahead, man, and showing love and definitely being a blessing to this show each and every single week. Talk to us, Miss Tracy, man. How's things been your way?
Everything's been going okay. Some challenges here and there, but you just have to work through things and keep it moving. It's summer now, and it's kind of quiet around the house, and kind of quiet at the school because at College of the Canyons, which is a community college here in Santa Clarita, it's a little bit quiet there. I work there like 2 days a week for 4 hours. And, most of the kids are gone, but some of them are still there. And I'm working on my second book proposal, which that's what you see back there is the summary of the chapters and stuff like that. And yeah.
All right. Seeing the book proposals. What can we expect out of this new book that you actually got coming out, Tracy?
Well, I'm going to be trying to help people to not get so offended over every little thing.
Wow. A book of offense. I like that.
Yeah.
That's going to be a little mystery for us to all have right here on this Lever Show. Yeah, we can't wait for our signed copies and stuff like that. I told you, my book of yours is right here. Look at it. Look at this. Lambo's not lying. Boom. Hey, I keep it right here at my desk side. I got my copy of Tracy's book. Y'all make sure y'all go get y'all copy out there, man. Many voices, one truth, man. I told y'all. We don't play these games out here, man, but this is for real, for real. We love the value and we love what you bring to the show, Miss Tracy. You
Thank
truly
you. I love
definitely
being here.
bless us. So let's talk tonight and stuff like that. We talk about a lot of different things, and every time you come back, you bless us with so much game, so much knowledge, just so much wisdom that you actually bring to you. Tonight, I want to actually kind of focus on, people being able to get themselves, man, motivated through success from stumbling blocks and all of that stuff in life that is crippling people from moving to the next level. Could you talk to us a little bit about that, Tracy, of why people do have stumbling blocks and how can they move to the next level from their stumbling blocks?
Life will create stumbling blocks. There's a lot of different reasons that a person will have a stumbling block. But if you're feeling like you're not motivated, I would say the first thing you should do is ask yourself, what else am I feeling? Because motivation is one of the signs of depression. If you don't feel motivated, it does not mean that you have depression. But if you're having sadness or an inability to experience joy, plus motivation, plus isolation or withdrawing from people, plus the host of other things, then you probably do have depression. And I would say go and talk with someone. But to recognize, even if you don't have depression or you're not necessarily anxious about anything, exploring for yourself, how come you can't get it together? Because not being motivated is usually a symptom of something else going on. So, but you have to be careful with it, because when you feel like you're wasting time, or you feel like, you can't get the motivation, that creates a certain chemistry in your body that you can easily get used to. So, on the one hand, even though you want motivation and you want to stop procrastinating, the guilt and all the stress that you feel because you do that, you'll get connected, not connected, but used to that. And so then you keep putting yourself in a place where there's procrastination and amotivation, basically, so you can continue to feel bad about yourself. But people do this subconsciously. And so you have to make it conscious. And so going to talk to someone about it, or even Googling something like, what are the causes of amotivation? And then seeing if you fit one of the things on that checklist.
Wow. So I think that, when most people, like you do say, like there is a checklist, right, that we can kind of check off. What are some of those signs on that checklist that we can check off?
um, having an intention to do something and then not doing it. And
Mhm.
so we are always, what our minds are always telling us is there is always tomorrow. So like when you want to do something and you put it off until tomorrow, you put yourself in a loop and a pattern that is going to guarantee that you'll put it off for the day after that, because there's always tomorrow. So looking for patterns, assessing to see if there are other symptoms associated with it, looking to see how do you feel after you get in that state of amotivation. Do you feel guilty? Do you feel shame? Do you feel embarrassment if you've, shared with someone that you were going to do something and then you don't do it? It could even be your diet, like our diets can wreak havoc on our body's ability to clean itself out and flush itself out, and all of that stuff wreaks havoc on your focus and your ability to be clear and things like that.
Mm. So I think that you're saying that that definitely has an effect on us. To be clear, you think the right diet itself actually plays a big part of you making a better decision in life?
Absolutely. I mean,
Mhm.
I took this course. I have this certification in food as medicine. Like, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist,
Mhm.
but it was this program put together for mental health professionals to teach us how certain foods, and it's always the same culprits: sugar, dairy, wheat, for some people, and things like that, cause brain fog. It causes you to not be able to be clear depending on the person. Like, I think that there are some people who can eat whatever and not really have that much of an impact, but excessive amounts of anything will eventually start showing up, not just physically but mentally as well. Like, it definitely can and will affect your clarity.
Wow. And that's what we're trying to figure out, like what affects that, because I see how big that it affects my life. When I eat the wrong food, and my doc was just sitting there letting me know just yesterday, like, hi, you need to be eating the right food, Mr. Johnson. You need not to be eating the wrong food in here, because the right food brings better results, better sleeping habits, better thinking habits, the whole nine. I
Mhm.
don't get a chance to get that, from everybody. But when Tracy actually talks, I'm actually like, yo, we got to listen, because I know and everything, man, you're the expert that actually has many components together, right? So and that's what we really want to see, many components together.
Mhm.
So I just did this. Hi, everyone. I'm looking at my screen and this screen. There's so many different comments and everything that's not showing up, but showing up on the other screens. Everybody out there, I see y'all. Just to let y'all know, I don't know what's going on with this algorithm, but hey, we're getting down to it and everything, man, today. But I see y'all, everybody. I see all these comments and stuff like that on the other screen from YouTube. Listen, in life, we actually have things that continuously to break us down, right? And that could be a numerous of things. We had so many people, man, over the weekend actually had a weight loss journey. And their weight loss journey, they were able to shed so many pounds because they were stressed out about a lot of things in life. They
Mhm.
had hit those stumbling blocks and roadblocks. So they took their time to eat as a time of them dealing with their situation. For someone who's out there who may be dealing with a stumbling block and they've used food or they used a vice like alcohol or anything else like that, a drug of their choice to kind of cope with the pain, what would you tell them out there, Tracy?
I would tell them to learn about your body chemistry, because grief creates a certain amount of pain, and whatever it is you feel like is a stumbling block, the only way out of it is through it. Like we can't like ignore things and pretend that things are not there and go around it. And sometimes when we engage in like food and alcohol and drugs and overworking, over shopping, whatever the case may be, all you're really doing is trading one brain chemistry for another.
Mm,
But that stumbling block is still going to be sitting there when you return to whatever is the task at hand. So it's better to figure out, like, try to address it. And if you can't do it on your own, look for someone that can help you. Look for someone, a therapist or someone like that, or a pastoral counselor, to help you to kind of get in the weeds and figure out, why is this stumbling block there? If it's something that you didn't cause, it might be something that you just have to wait out, figure out what can I do to contribute? Is there anything that I can do to help this situation? And if there is, face the situation, do what you know you have to do, because again, it's still just going to be sitting there when you come back from, working 50 hours last week or whatever.
Well, I think that, that has been a struggle with us all to try to get to the next level. And we're always constantly putting in work, constantly overextending ourselves to where we don't make some of those wiser decisions that we should be making.
Mhm.
For those and everything who are working and have overworked themselves and they're not making the right decision or prioritizing their
Mhm.
lifestyle, how could they actually do something that allows them to have a more steady priority of their life, their lifestyle, whether it's kids, children, work, job, play, whatever the case may be?
Yeah. Well, normally, I would tell people to organize their calendar and then put in the kind of stuff that you're naming around their work schedule. But people will, in cases where there's a motivation or there's stumbling blocks going on, people will put in their work, but then they'll make their work bigger. So what I typically do is tell people to put in avenues of self-care first, like put in your relaxation first. It's kind of like the financial people that will tell you to save off the top, like pay yourself first and save off the top. Sometimes you have to do that for self-care as well, where you calendar that and then you live in integrity with yourself and follow what it is you wrote down. So like if you have a 9 to 5 job, I wouldn't say put in the work, because you're not going to not go to work. You know
Yeah.
what your hours are, but you'll just extend your hours past the point of being able to implement self-care, whether it's time off or time with your family, or going on a bike ride, going on a walk. I would say put those in first, so that that's a cue to tell you, okay, I'm only working up until this hour on this day and this day, because I've already put in these avenues of self-care and refreshment.
Good answer. Thank you for that, Tracy. For some of
Mhm.
those people who are actually working hard, I've got a lot of people, man, who got kids who are going to college and people are going to school. They're making all of these plans. And I think that a lot of times in life, especially in summer, the summer months, we tend to almost forget family. And I told you before that the kids are home from school, they're home from college, they're home from wherever. How in the world can we finally, as adults, get some of our mental sanity back when the kids are home and they feel like they're stressing out our hairs and our hairs are going more gray and losing more hair than we actually should be having on our head?
Well, that depends on how old your kids are, because parenting, there's seasons of parenting. And if you still have little ones at home and they're just there all day, you're just going to have to figure out, how to manage that and make sure that you have your time. But they're just going to eat up your time because they're there. They're not in school anymore. But that's just the season. At some point, they will be in high school and have a little bit more, agency within themselves to figure out their own day for the summer. And definitely when they're in college, like, don't give up your day. I mean, maybe some days so that you can hang out with them because they've been living at college every day. But putting in your schedule time that you're going to have with your wife and time for yourself, and not feeling like life has to stop because the kids are home from school. Like, they're adults now. And so when you have kids in college, that's a completely different season. All of the seasons are seasonal. Like, they go from complete dependence to more and more independence. And hopefully by the time they're in college, they can come home for a visit and not necessarily expect that you're giving them. They probably won't even want you to give them 24/7.
Yeah.
But some might. And if you have one of those that will expect that, then you have to, let them know that, nope, I need my time too, and I'm going to honor my schedule and honor what I put down for myself. So let's get together. Let's go to the beach on Wednesday, or
Mhm.
something like that. But just like communicating, and you understanding as a parent, what season am I in? Like, what stage of parenting am I in? Because it's you can't respond to elementary school like you would to high school or college.
Speaking of that, I think that because of kids coming back, or either kids and everything, man, being from home, we find this disconnect with kids, right? Because the parent has overexhausted themselves working just to make means so that the family can actually do, summer trips or whatever the case may be. But we find this disconnect and everything, man, with the child itself. Like, hey, you don't know me, or I've grown up so much. How do we get that connect back with the kids that we thought as parents we should have, but somehow along the way through school or whatever has somewhat slipped away?
Yeah, be honest with them. Like, if they say you don't know me, you would say something like, maybe I don't. I knew you once, but you're right. You have grown, and in the midst of you growing, I've been raising you and working, and maybe I have worked too much, to, be paying the bills and stuff. You don't want to like make them feel bad about it, but just like be honest with where you're at and say, but I'd like to get to know who you are now. Like, how can we, and maybe have some ideas yourself on how that can go about, but ask them, what can I do to make that happen, where you, and then look for questions that you can ask, like ask them about their likes now, because what they liked when they were little, they may still like some of that stuff. But I often hear kids say, I'm not 10.
Yeah, yeah.
Stuff like that. And I'm not 10 means, there's different likes that they have, and they want you to know. And, because they wouldn't say that to you if they didn't want you to know. So they do want you. So I think the best thing you can do with kids is just be honest with, yeah, you're right, this is where I have been, instead of getting offended by it and trying to defend yourself, because you're not going to win, because they have all these expectations of you, and so, yeah.
I love that expectations, man, that children have for us. I
Mhm.
always heard the saying that they're watching you, they're observing you, and
Mhm.
they observe to see what you're gonna do, and is this parent the right parent or not, or do they design their lifestyle to be like their parents or not? Because maybe there's a disconnect, or maybe there's something that the child has seen where, look, I don't want to be that way as a parent, you
I
know.
think, yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, 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 no. I'm perfectly fine. It looks like you were wanting to go ahead and piggyback off of that.
Yeah, I think most people say they don't want to be like their parents, and then they end up being like their parents,
Yeah.
because that's what they know, and that's what's been ingrained in them. And so, like, if you hear your kids say that, ask them why. Like, why? What is it that you see that you don't want to imitate? Because perhaps I can be a little better in that area. I mean, it takes a lot of humility to be a parent, and most of us don't have a whole lot of that, because we are a people that want to be appreciated. Like, we bend over backwards for our kids. And, some people give up careers, some people give up chosen paths that they would have gone down, and things like that. And then there's an expectation that your kid is going to be grateful for that, but they are absolutely not going to be, unless they're just exceptional in that way, where they can read between the lines. And some kids can, and they can see below the surface and, have that gratitude. But most of them, that gratitude is not going to come until, probably the first sightings you'll see of it is their early 20s or mid 20s.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that definitely goes a long way, because they do ask those questions where, you know what, I don't know if I really want to be like them or not. But then they come to find out they're just like them. I've got family members where I've had a nephew who never seen his father a day in his life and talks and acts just like him, just a way better version of him.
Mhm.
And it's amazing like that they have those characteristics. Is that anything that may be linked that's a genealogy thing, do you think?
Yeah, sometimes it's personality and temperament, and you just inherit a similar. It's not going to be the same personality or the same temperament, but there will be aspects that are just in your DNA and in your genetic makeup, and just how it shows up in you as a person, even if you haven't been around that person. Like they've done twin studies where the twins were adopted, and one raised by one family and one by the other. So they've and two different kinds of setups, and they come together, and both of these twins like have the same mannerisms or similar mannerisms or certain quirks that are similar, even though they were not raised in the same household.
Wow, that's very interesting to hear that because
Mhm.
I've seen it and time again after raising some family members of mine, and then all of a sudden, boom, they end up just like the mom. And I'm just like, what in the heck? Never raised around a mom or anything, but
Mhm.
it's just interesting to even hear that, and you even say that, man, on this broadcast like that. Now I
Mhm.
got a very hot topic. I see someone had asked a question. What do you do with children who have been introduced to drugs, paraphernalia? How do you deal with the child or someone, a family member who's dealt with that and is dealing with that?
Yeah, they probably won't tell you, but I would ask them, where did you see that, or where did you come in contact with that? But don't ask it in an aggressive way. And the reason you want to ask is because you want to figure out, well, who do I need to, keep away from my child? Like, if it's auntie this one or uncle that one, then maybe that's not the best person, to be around your child until they can get that area of their life together. And then depending on the age of the child, I would ask them, what are your thoughts about that? Like, see what their thoughts are, because you might think that kids might think that this is cool, but they might not think that. They might, but whatever is their answer, then you would have to, go from there, whether that's seeking professional help, whether that's doing some research on your own to see how to talk with them, but you'd have to be like, try to come from a place of love, because
Mhm.
there's like three different areas that most of us parent from. One is fear based, and a fear based parent leads with fear. Like, they're afraid that this is going to happen and that's going to happen, or this is going to impact their child, or that's going to impact their child. So most of the decisions come from a place of fear. And then
Mhm.
there's love, and the coming from a place of love is, there's a lot of questions, because you're curious, you want them to be curious about themselves. But if in the Bible, if you look at the definition of love, it's patient, kind, it doesn't keep a record of wrongs, it doesn't envy, it doesn't brag or boast, and things like that. So like, being mindful of those characteristics when you're parenting your child from a place of love. Like, love um, is not afraid. Like, people think that, the absence of, not the absence, the opposite of love is hate, and sometimes it is. But I think sometimes the opposite of love can be fear. So the parent that's coming from a place of love understand that their children are different from them, that they have their own journey, and their journey is not to live the journey of the child, but to help the child navigate their own journey, and just whatever that looks like. And then the third place is that some of us come from parenting, is a place of neglect, where the kid is pretty much on their own. Anything goes. They're plopped down in front of a TV and, given whatever so that they can parent themselves. And a lot of the needs are not met. Now, most people use kind of like vacillate between, two and sometimes all three of them. But just knowing that, being mindful of and asking yourself, where this question that I'm about to ask, or this consequence that I'm about to give, is this from a place of love, or is this from a place of fear? Because if you're addressing it, it's not from a place of neglect. If you
Right.
don't address it, then it's coming from a place of neglect.
Mm. And I think that's really kind of stemming that we see the rise
Mhm.
of high school suicides and children
Mhm.
who are more suicidal and are literally writing these notes and unfortunately, the inevitable happens where they're ending their life tragically because they didn't have that connection. Uh, I know you said that they either have a fear, neglect, or love. They're out of those three. That's perfectly fine with parenting. How can someone be the best parent they could
Mhm.
possibly be by using those three different systems and weaving those together that allows them to become that better parent and lets the parent know, hey, they didn't fail. They're not failing in life. Because a lot of parents sometimes when the child continuously keeps going out there, they get that burden on that child, like, hey, I didn't do such a good job of parenting. How can they pivot from that as a parent and turn that thing around and be more of a voice of influence in that child's life?
Well, I think when you said be the best parent they can be, I think you start with that because none of us are going to be perfect parents, but a good base to start from so that you can try to be the best parent that you can be is to deal with yourself first. Like, what are some of your issues and wounds? Hold on a second. No. I'm sorry, Lambo.
Yeah, you good.
My I don't want my little dog to go into my bedroom. So
I love it. I love it. I love it. Let's go.
she's gonna get up on the bed, and yeah, it's just gonna be. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, so deal with like think about your what are your wounds and do the best that you can to heal some of those so that you're coming to your child in as clean a slate as possible. None of us are going to be a clean slate because we all have influences. We all have our own traumas and wounds and stuff. But if you can work on those and get as much healing as possible, healing helps you to be a good parent because you're not being reactionary. You're not parenting from all these filters from your own childhood. But again, that's just doing the best you can. There's no guarantee, that, unless you're, Claire and Mr. Huxtable,
Mr. Huxtables. Ah!
unless you're one of them,
Yeah.
well, Heathcliff Huxtable and Claire Huxtable, then the most of us, we just, trying to do the best we can. And one of the best ways you can start off is by, knowing what your own stuff is and dealing with it so that it's not informing your parenting in a negative way.
Mm, that's good. Tracy, over the years, we've watched parents have to transition because of rules, whether legislative rules or anything else in the courthouse, where people can't go on ahead and be the parents how we came up. We came up in the South, where, in Tracy, you as well, where when our parents said something, I mean, they could literally say something and strike fear inside of us,
Mhm.
just from what they said. What would be a better approach now in this time that we're in that allows us to still be within those laws, but allows us to parent just a little bit better so that we can have that relationship with that child?
Yeah, coming from a place of curiosity and asking questions so that you're not, coming in all guns blazing. Because a lot of times when parents do that, it is from a place of fear because they're trying to protect their child from someone, from something, and maybe someone, but from something or some situation. But they don't have enough vulnerability within themselves to show that, or enough. They probably have humility, but maybe not. Maybe, some parents feel like it's my way or the highway. But if your child is less than 18 years old, the highway is not really an option. So, like, don't even say that. If you got a 20 and 30-year-old sleeping on your couch, then, that's an option.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
but yeah, just again, like going back to how can I parent from a place of love? And one of the best ways to do that is to be curious and ask questions and not assume that what you see is what's going on, because what you see is not always it's not always what you get.
Hmm. Wow, Tracy. You actually been giving some great knowledge on here because I think a lot of the times us as parents, we put in our heads and we assess the situation to the best way possible, and we automatically say, "Hey, this is what it's got to be. This is what you're dealing with." not knowing the full story from front to back and cover to cover. Exactly what steps can we take of analyzing that and saying, you know what, we're going to go ahead and take a step back and really take a deep look into this before we jump forward and make a decision like most of us do. And our parents used to go ahead and slap you across the face or hit you with something. How can we not get to that point of that frustration and fear of putting that inside of a child?
Keeping your anger and your frustration in check. But before even like, I guess it's kind of two different things. If you're already in the moment and you feel that your anger is rising and you're about to, haul off and slap your kid, understand that most of the time, almost all the time, anger is a secondary emotion, and there's usually a primary emotion on top. So one of the ways you can stop yourself is to ask yourself internally, what else am I feeling? And so instead of saying, you never listen to me, and then hauling off and hitting the kid, if the other thing that you're feeling is fear or concern, then saying something like, I am concerned that you're not listening to me is ultimately going to bring harm to you. And that's saying you never listen to me. That just creates heat. And whereas the other statement I have a concern that, you're consistently not listening to me is just going to bring grief to your life. That's that's coming from a different place. So you can kind of put out the fire of that by checking with yourself as soon as you feel it, wherever you feel it in your body, and then asking yourself, what else am I feeling? And name that emotion and try to communicate from that emotion. But if it's something that you're trying to build over time, I would say either reach out to a professional to help them, to have them help you figure out why you go straight to anger and why you're so reactionary. Like, what is it in your life, your past or the present of your life that causes you to go from 0 to 60 like that? If you don't have time for a therapist or you feel like you can't afford a therapist, then something called morning pages. Have I ever told you about morning pages?
I thought you might have mentioned something like that some few broadcasts back.
Morning pages is a form of journaling. And I think the lady that created it, I forget her name. I want to say Julie Cameron, but I don't think it's her. But she's kind of like a writer's person. Like, I've read her books. And I think it comes from Writing Down the Bones, or maybe it does come from Julie Cameron. But it's a form of journaling where the first thing you do in the morning is you write 3 pages of whatever just comes out. And it doesn't have to make any sense, but when you're doing it consistently, it cleans you out. Like, it clears out your psyche and it gets all of this stuff out of your system. And then you can start having some self-understanding, because at some point it is going to make sense. And even the stuff that doesn't make sense, at some point, patterns of thinking and behaving show up, and then you can address those patterns. But I think the best thing, and I am a therapist, so maybe I'm saying that, because I'm a therapist, but I don't think so. I think the best thing, the best way to help yourself is to work in conjunction with someone. It doesn't have to be a therapist, someone that you trust, someone that has some wisdom in the area that you're thinking about, to help you sort it out by talking about it.
I think that's a great approach, that you having that morning page and writing that down. I think it's almost like keeping the brain itself, to unrelease those thoughts that may be like pegged inside of someone's head, to officially get that out. And a lot of people don't know exactly what to do with that. Where do I go? What to say? And I think that that's huge for a lot of people to be able to use those morning pages. Yeah. Now, pivoting from that, I think that there is so many people in life, and we want to talk about parenting, right? So many people in their life, parent or friend. Which section do you put, or should categorize the parent being the parent or the parent being the friend, to have a more healthier, communicable relationship with inside of the household?
It depends on how old the child is, because parenting happens in like 4 different stages or seasons. Like, the first stage is commander, where you just simply tell them what to do, because they're like people that say they're letting their 2-year-old decide for themselves. There's going to be some trouble down the road because a 2-year-old does not have a prefrontal cortex and won't have it until they're 25. So there
Hmm.
needs to be, you need to tell them what it is you expect and tell them what it is you want them to do. And the coaching stage happens anywhere from like birth or 18 months to elementary school, right? And elementary school, I mean like second grade or so. And some of these stages overlap. And then there's a coaching where you do something, you show them how to do it, and you do it with them, and then you watch them do it, just like a coach would, whatever the case may be. And so each one of these stages, they're just building upon each other because, again, you're going from total dependence to like helping them to be independent along the way. And then that the coaching stage lasts anywhere from like, third grade or so to about sixth or seventh grade. And then after that is the counseling stage. And the counseling stage is where you start asking questions because you want them to think through their decisions and learn how to do that. I mean, that's why we have so many adults that they just can't make a decision.
Yeah.
They've never really, either their parents didn't think about the counseling stage or just continue to tell them what to do and, rule with an iron fist, not allow them to make mistakes for fear of filling the blank or whatever. But in the counseling stage, that's usually the adolescent stage where you do give advice and you do give counsel, but you also ask questions. Even if you already know the answer, you want them to think through the answer. You want them to come up with it, and it's probably not going to be wrong. It might be different, but if it's wrong, then it's probably something that's unsafe. And so you do want to speak into that. Wrong usually means unsafe when it's really wrong. Wrong is not wrong if it's just different from what you would do, right? And then the stage after that is confidant, and that's the friend stage.
Mhm.
So you have to wait. Like people, you can be friendly with your kids, but you're a parent, and if you don't operate in that role, either no one will or somebody that you don't want having that role will operate in that
Mm.
role. And so the confidant stage is, like probably of the college years and on, and that's one of, if you've navigated all these stages, because nobody thinks about this stuff. Like most of this stuff is just intuitive. And there are people who have 20 somethings who don't have a relationship with them. They
Yeah.
don't want to talk with them. They don't want to be around them. They make up excuses to stay at college instead of coming home during the breaks and stuff like that. But when you have navigated that pretty well, and not perfectly, because nobody's perfect, but you've navigated those stages, even though you didn't know you were navigating them, even though you didn't know that that's what's going on. One of the fruits of that is a confidant stage. And a confidant, you're the confidant, where they come to you and ask for advice. They come to you and, want to know what you think about things and, stuff like that, you know?
No, I
So
get
the
it.
confidant stage is so I would say save the friend until they're like in college or something. And that might be a little strict for some people are like, what? But
Yeah,
I mean, that's
it's,
what I would say.
it's truthfully told. I got a question from somebody in the comments here. They said, "How do you heal after a traumatic experience?"
Um, Lots of different ways. Part of that might be getting counsel, like talking about it. When someone has a really bad trauma, one of the first things that you want to do is have them tell a story. And that
Mm.
might sound counterintuitive because you're thinking, well, the person's going to relive the story and that's just going to make them have, but not with a professional that's trained in it. Like the professional that's trained in it will hold the experience so that the person can talk about it and process it without attaching themselves to it because the professional is holding it. But the more people talk about the story and the more they discuss it and process it, the further away from it that they're getting. So like if you have a trauma and you don't do anything to heal it, like seeking counsel,
Mhm.
I think depending on what the trauma is, I would say you kind of should go and get a professional and not just do something like journaling. But journaling helps, prayer helps. And I guarantee if you pray, God's going to lead you to the resources that you need, whatever whatever those resources are for you. Like it's different for every person. Not everybody, there's not a set way, to recover from trauma, because it depends on the trauma, it depends on the person and their personality and temperament, and it depends on whether it's complicated trauma, like whether more than one thing happened in that traumatic event, or where there's or whether there's a history of trauma, or this is the first really, thing that's a big trauma in someone's life. So it just depends on the person. But the way I would say healing begins with sharing your story with someone, getting someone to help you process it, being kind to yourself and healing yourself. Because a lot of times, taking care of yourself, because a lot of times when people have something bad happen to them, they start to blame themselves, and they start to question, like, either why me, or I shouldn't have been there, or I shouldn't have da 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 da, and they immediately take the blame off of the person, situation, or event that caused the trauma, and then place it on themselves. And if that happens, then it's going to be really hard to heal, because everywhere you go, there you are. Someone that hurts you, you can get away from them. You can decide not to have a relationship with them if you know them, or you can, go to the police and, have them put in jail by telling what they did, and things like that. So but you can't get away from you.
And I think that's such a big part. I was watching this documentary, or this show, man, that Mary J. Blige had did. I don't know if you've seen that movie, or I think it was on Lifetime or something. And there was a lady, she was a college student, dealt with a lot of stuff in life, man, didn't have a lot of opportunities, but she dealt with being raped out there. And I know we're talking about traumatic experiences, and I just thought that this tied right in for somebody who may be still carrying that burden of molestation or rape, or just being and everything, man, violated. How do they get through that? And what will you tell them?
For something like that, there are stages of healing, and the first stage is, it's just shock, and that's where it's if you can, try to start the healing process right away, because then the second stage after that, the person can go into like a denial, and they just want to get back to their normal life, and get back to whatever and stuff like that. And then there's a stage where it could be years later, you haven't talked about it, it'll just come up like it just happened yesterday. So meet yourself where you're at. Like if you are in a position where you're in your 30s or 40s, and this happened in college and you never told anybody, more than likely it is impacting your life, and it may even be impairing your ability to be the person that you were created to be, because something like that will create a fear that just kind of haunts you and follows you around. So whatever stage you're in, whether it just happened, whether 2 or 3 years have gone by, whether 5 or 6 years have gone by or more, I would say reach out, for counseling. Like, I don't know if there is what do you call it? A statute of limitations on reporting something like rape, but you might want to consider doing that. And even if nothing happens with the person, doing something like that will often tell you that I had the care for myself. So sometimes ourself need us to take care of us and stand in the gap and have a voice, and things like that. But wherever you are, whether it just happened or it happened 20, 30 years ago, reaching out for counsel, and taking care of yourself, like figuring out how can you love yourself through this? Because if it's resurfacing and it's been 20 years ago, you can let it go back underground, but you'll be revisiting it again in your 50s or 60s.
And do you think that, because I've got people who've dealt with this, and shout out to Larry saying, yeah, meet yourself where you're at. There's grace in that statement. A lot of times in life, I think and let me shift it back. A lot of times in life, in us as parents, we don't want to see the harmfulness of our kids to go through any traumatic experience like that. And that puts in the mindset of us as parents, maybe, I should be overprotective of my kids, overprotective of people who are close to me, like my children, my kids. than putting them back out there into the world. How do us as parents learn to be able to deal with a traumatic experience like that? Because there are some people who are watching who have went through this with their own kids who I know personally. How do they get forward with that to help be that valuable piece of information or that valuable resource to their children?
With parents, it's hard because most parents, even if you're 1,000 miles away when it happened, most people will find a way to blame themselves and what they should have done and not done, and things like that. And unfortunately, most people will, end up becoming like super protective or overprotective for fear of something like that happening to their children again, or their child again, for one. And for two, kind of like a subconscious overcompensation for the guilt that they feel, even if they didn't do anything. Like, even if there's nothing that they could have done to prevent this, i.e., because they were like 1,000 miles away, or even next door, but it's people that you trust and things like that. Sometimes people will overcompensate by being overprotective because they're unconsciously trying to make up for what they think was a failure. But again, it's a meet yourself where you're at. Like, we live in a fallen world, we live in a broken world. Bad things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people, bad things happen to innocents, like children. And so, I'm not going to tell anybody don't be overprotective. You protect your child as much as you feel like you need to protect your child, but know that some of that is probably coming from a place of fear. And if something has happened to your child, that fear response is a warranted response. Like, it's understandable that you would be afraid that something like that would happen. So I would get some family counseling. Like, almost all my answers will be get some family counseling, or some kind of counseling to help you through it, whether it's with a therapist, whether it's with a pastoral counselor, whether it's with somebody, that has a lot of wisdom in whatever the area is. And that last part is kind of important, because sometimes we can go to people that we know to be wise and things like that, but they don't really know what this area is. So I would say reach out for counseling for yourself so that you can process all of your thoughts and feelings and all the ways that you might be blaming yourself or blaming somebody else, so that you can be as clear as possible in being there, for the child, like figuring out how to make the child feel safe. But if something happens to a person's child, that it's not unusual that the response will be to become overprotective.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Uh, Tracy Hughes, shout out to Trace, man, my guy. He said, I found out the other day that one of my parishioners, that there is no statute of limitation at all, not here in South Carolina.
Okay, good.
You
Yeah.
know,
That's good, because there's no, and I don't know if it's every state, but there's no statute of limitations for murder, and something like that kills a part of the person's spirit. So there shouldn't be a statute of limitation for it.
yeah.
Something
Shout
like
out.
rape, something like rape kills a part of the person's spirit. Yeah.
And I think we're talking about, that earlier with the Huxtable, the Heathcliff Huxtable, who actually went through that and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I think that no matter what type of caliber or person that was, going through that has since bring trauma. And that was years ago to so many people. And there was no statute of limitation,
Yeah.
even with that case as well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately. Now,
Yeah.
pivoting from that, let's ask this. There's dealing with trauma. You
Hmm.
say to go to the pastor or go to somebody, man, of counsel, of wise counsel. How does
Hmm.
someone deal with in a relationship traumatic experience that their husband or their spouse has been caught, cheating, or they've been out there and they're just flying by nilly willy? How do we actually get from that when the counselor, as suggested, the two people still remain together? How do they get from that?
Well, counselors should not be suggesting that. They should not be suggesting that the two people remain together. Now, that's different for pastoral counselors, like, because pastoral counselors are coming from the part of the Bible that says God hates divorce, and with the exception
Mhm.
of marital infidelity. But even then, that's the exception. If there has been marital infidelity, and your pastoral counselor is saying stay together, then I think that needs to be a deeper conversation, because even God allows for that depending on, who you are. Like there's lots of people that survive marital infidelity, but for some people they just can't, and even God gives a way out for that. So uh what was your question again?
No, I mean, how does somebody, who's went through that traumatic experience within the marriage, how do they go ahead and deal with that when they have been given by wise counsel to stay
To
together
stay
and it's a
together.
repeat offender, like
Yeah.
repeatedly doing
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. I mean, okay, so let me answer that question before I give you an example. You have to decide for yourself what you want for your life. And like I said, there's lots of people who survive marital infidelity, but they usually do it through hard work, through repentance, because infidelity, it's a sin against the marriage, against your own soul, and against your spouse. And so, like if we're talking like biblically speaking,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
nobody can live your life for you. So if you have somebody in your life, whether it's a professional or anybody, saying you need to stay in the situation that has been a repeat offense, or that even if it's been one time and you're feeling like, I can't do this, you have to decide for yourself what you're going to do. I have a really close friend who is a grief counselor,
Hmm.
and she always suspected, that her husband was, out there. He was very flirtatious, even in front of her. He wouldn't wear his wedding ring to work, and stuff like that. And but she would always, they would have other kind of clashes, right? And
Hmm.
so people were telling her, you need to stay married because there's no proof that he has. And she would be praying and saying, if he has, please let me know, and stuff like that. And God would never say, yeah, he has, or no, he hasn't. It would never be. But she was driving in the car one day, and she was thinking about this and praying about it. And he said to her, I am going to do through you whatever I'm going to do through you, whether you stay or whether you go. But just so you know, what you see is never going to change. There's never going to be any different behavior. And she was like, oh, I'm out. It was like a clear thought in her mind. And basically, God was saying, it's your life, you live it, but I'm going to do through you whatever I have to do through you. But just so you know, this what you're experiencing, you're going to be experiencing it the duration of the marriage. That's how she interpreted it. And she left, even though there were several people saying, well, you don't have proof, so biblically speaking, you can't leave. But her gut was telling her that there, and then, after they got a divorce and stuff, all this proof came to light and stuff like that. But yeah, so only you can live your life, and nobody waking up next to that man but you, and nobody waking up next to that woman but you. So
Hmm.
you have to decide for yourself, if your heart and soul is being torn asunder time after time by somebody else's behavior, that's something you need to evaluate and figure out, for yourself, and not rely on other people telling you what to do.
Mm. Well, that gives me to my next question. I love Tracy on here. You on the Leverage Show dropping dimes. Shout out to Tracy for being here on the Leverage Show. How does a person actually build? Let's talk about a couple marriage. They
Mhm.
build themselves back after they consistently has been tearing down of verbal abuse. It may not be physical abuse, but verbal abuse after verbal abuse after verbal abuse. Should they stay? Should they go? Should they, you talk about seeking counsel. What if they sought counsel and nothing changed from that?
Well, it depends on what kind of verbal abuse. If it's verbal abuse where they're tearing you down, and cussing you out or calling you names, then you have to set a boundary with that. You have to give a message that this isn't good for me. I don't like this. If you don't stop this, this will be the consequence. And then you figure out what that consequence is and you follow through on it, because sometimes people just don't change because they're rooted in whatever it is they're rooted in. And so in order to move forward, that person who's doing that should go to counseling and figure out, why they're doing that. Why do they come from that place, and get some healing? Because if you can get some healing, then some of that will start to come down. So if it's arguing where there's a lot of yelling and screaming, but there isn't anyone tearing you down or calling you names, then that's probably an emotional executive functioning issue. That we have all of these different executive functionings of our brain that some of us are delayed in, and emotion regulation can be one of them. So like if that's going on, then the person probably has a developmental delay. Like it's a symptom of a developmental delay, or it can be a symptom of a developmental delay in your ability to regulate your emotions. So like if the person is just yelling and screaming and there's just always all these fights, but there isn't any name calling, cussing out, or tearing down per se, then it could be stressful dealing with a person's fits of rage and anger explosions like that. But listening to see, or being able to differentiate, is this something that's going on between me and this person, or am I the target? If you're being called names or hit or shoved or torn down with words or cussed out, then it's directed at you. If not, it's just a person's inability to regulate their emotions. And I think you need to get some help with that, because executive function is a real issue. Like most people with ADHD have that. And some of the other areas have to do with organizing and planning, staying focused, and, things like that. And emotion regulation is just one of them.
Wow. Listen, you guys, thank you so much, Tracy. We got to do a hard stop tonight. Miss Tracy has a wonderful function to go to, but we really want to thank this. Miss Tracy's going to pick up where we left off, because she left us on a roller coaster with this one right here. Thank you tonight, Miss Tracy, for this. Thank you for your time, your expertise, for everything that you bring to the show. Y'all give a shout out to Miss Tracy, man. Give us some love right here on the Leverage Show. She definitely gave y'all an hour of a punch in the face, a good punch in the face, not verbally, not physically, but a good punch in the face that has been a blessing to all of us. And shout out to what Tracy said: where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. If believers is not experiencing liberty, is God in it at all? I love that comment. My wife says, man, God gave us women one of the great gifts. We know something is not right. That is facts.
Yeah.
Facts. It's intuition. Yeah. Shout out to you, Too Huge. I see that wonderful super chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Listen, Miss Tracy will be back on the Leverage Show again in like another 2 months. She comes every other month, and she blesses us and leaves us on these cliffhangers that allows us to be able to want more of Miss Tracy. We love you, Miss Tracy. Thank you, thank you, thank you again.
Thank you. I love you guys too. Thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome. You better make sure you come back to the show and everything, man, and continue to keep bringing that heat that you always bring, and continue to keep setting people free. All right?
All right.
Listen, everybody, look, we love you guys. I see y'all guys here. Y'all showing everybody on the screen, on this other screen. I can't even pull it up on this screen, but there's a lot of love, a lot of hearts, a lot of clapping going on. Blue Sky, see you in the building. My wifey's in the building, man. Issa, Tracy, I see y'all in the building. Croc, LA Law, Jamal Titus, man. Ken, I see y'all all in the building. Thank y'all, thank y'all, thank y'all for an awesome, wonderful night. We will be back here again next Tuesday night, man, July 4th. I'm doing definitely a July 4th special right here on the Leverage Show. Listen, love you guys. Have an awesome, great week. Me and Tracy Taris are out. She's going to her function, and she's going to make sure that she shows the Leverage Show family that she had a great time here. We love y'all, man. Take care, y'all. God bless. Have a good time. Until next time. Make sure y'all go like, subscribe, and follow Miss Tracy Taris on Instagram at Tracy Taris, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And my email subscription list at tracytaris.com.
TracyTaris.com. Y'all listen, y'all get that. TracyTaris.com, and you get on that email subscription list, and let Miss Tracy bless y'all life tremendously, because she's bringing out a lot of content. I'm telling y'all what I know, man. Listen, we love y'all. Y'all make sure y'all tap in. Go support Miss Tracy. Go buy her book if you ain't got it. I got my copy, and she's got another one coming out. Many Voices, One Truth. Make sure you go get your copy today if you can, and wait for that new book to come out, man, because it's definitely going down. Thank you again, Miss Tracy. Larry, I see you. Issa, I see you. Love y'all, man. Have a wonderful night. We see you on the Leverage Show next go around. Please.